Hey, it's Chuck Armstrong with Loudwire Nights, and this is Loudwire Nights On Demand. Rob Dietrich is a good friend of the show, and he is a good friend of the Metallica family. Rob is the master distiller of Metallica's Blackened American Whiskey, and so we caught up about all things whiskey and all things Metallica. This aired on Wednesday, September 25th. Enjoy. I'm so happy to welcome tonight's special guest to the show. He's hung out with us in the past, and he's got to have one of the coolest jobs in the world. And I know he agrees because he calls it his dream job within a dream job. Rob Dietrich, master distiller for Blackened American Whiskey, Metallica's very own whiskey. Thank you so much for being here tonight, man.
It's good to see you, Chuck, and good to be here again. Always a pleasure to talk to you.
Yeah, always, man. It's been a minute since we've hung out on the show, but I know you and I got to break bread together not too long ago in Minneapolis when Metallica took over the city on their M72 tour. How are you feeling these days, man? How are things going?
Good. It's been fun. That was, we're still running strong with the 72 Seasons tour. We're doing Blackened Whiskey takeovers every city, at least on the North American tour. It's just amazing. I mean, there's such a great community within, I think, the Metallica fan base and the Metallica family. And the whiskey community. I mean, it's all kind of these great communities all converging and tying together under kind of one roof.
Well, I'm glad you say that too, because you really are part of that whiskey world. You're also such a big part of the Metallica world. I mean, there's no question about it. When we were at the Minneapolis show, I love seeing how many people come up to you to say hi or to get a picture. Their love of Metallica and their music. It's not like it ends, right? If Metallica's involved with Blackened, then they love Blackened, and since you're the master distiller, they love you, Rob. Like you're part of that big family with Metallica too. Do you feel that connection? I have to imagine when you're out and about, when you're at these shows, when you're at these Blackened takeovers.
Oh, without a doubt. And I think what's key here is that I'm a music enthusiast already. I was in the music industry for many years because I absolutely love music. I love live shows. I've loved Metallica since, 7th grade. I was a metalhead. My parents had a great vinyl collection growing up, which I've absorbed into my collection now. So I think I've got close to 2,400 records, awesome. Vinyl records now. Of all kinds. I mean, everything from, I've got tons of metal. I've got old school country. I've got hip hop. I've got, new wave. I've kind of run the gambit because I love music so much, and getting to kind of share that experience with people. I love making whiskey. I love tasting whiskey. I love educating people on whiskey and enjoying a dram or two with them. So I think getting to embrace all of those things that I love dearly it's a real treasure.
I love that, man. I love hearing that. And yeah, I mean, that's whenever I hear an interview with you, whenever you're on the show, that always just comes through, man. Like you're a fan first. And the fact that you get to be part of the Metallica world, be part of this whiskey world, like that's just, that's just extra. But the fact that you're a fan first and foremost, and I love that.
Yeah, well, and there's so many great people that I've met on this journey and on the road. I've been making whiskey for 18 years, and I know a lot of people in my whiskey community and in the spirits industry, and I just you cross paths throughout the years at different whiskey events or spirits events. But now I'm kind of, I've got this whole other world where I'm crossing paths with all these people that I have gotten to meet along the way, who are part of the Metallica world, who also enjoy a little bit of whiskey as well. And it's a lot of fun just to be able to embrace that.
If you weren't in the whiskey world, what do you think you'd be doing, man?
I'd probably still be in the music business. I think either that or something to do with like custom hot rods and motorcycles, something creative. I have to be doing something where I'm creating something unique.
Yeah.
I like embracing the art form.
I love that, man. Well, and talking about creating something and unique things, I think the last time you were on Loudwire Nights, it was right before Blackened released the 72 Seasons blend of the whiskey, celebrating Metallica's latest studio album. Since then, there's been a few more things, the collaboration with Rabbit Hole, that blend of straight Tennessee and Kentucky bourbons. And I think there was a new blend of the rye whiskey, Rye the Lightning. I assume your hands are on, like you're involved with each and every unique release that comes out of Blackened.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And a lot of these whiskeys are, I'm either collaborating with someone else, embracing our whiskey community, so to speak. And then, but I'm coming up with new ideas, new blends, new expressions of the whiskey all the time. And I think it's just like, I do equate it to making music, writing a new song, making a new blend of whiskey. We did our second version of the Rye the Lightning, which was this year in 2024. It was a 95% rye, but I did go back to that same cask finish because it was just such a popular. It was just so well received, and I absolutely loved it. And doing that Madeira cask finish and then cask finishing with rum, it really is just something I like to lean into. Playing around with flavor as an art form.
Yeah, it's cool, man. You're right. Like the way people maybe create art or whatever that might be, music, writing, whatever that looks like to be able to do that with something like whiskey. It's such a cool thing. And I know, like, really, Rob, until you and I started talking and until I started just kind of like understanding the process a little bit, I never really thought of whiskey or any type of liquor in that way. But it's so cool to take a step back and be like, no, this is that there is actually a lot going on here, and it's not just something for me to take a shot of and move on. But there's a lot that goes into this, whether it's the black noise process for Blackened or just these blends or these collaborations that pop up.
Yeah. And that's the thing. Like, I think we all start somewhere on our journey of understanding our own palate, for one, and also understanding that whiskey doesn't have to hurt. It can actually be an enjoyable thing. I think it's when historically, you see a cowboy going into a saloon and just like throwing back some rot gut and just kicking the bar stool over and making a face. It doesn't have to be like that. There's levels to where you don't have to mix it with anything. You can actually enjoy the whiskey neat and understand that there are layers and the artistry and the skill set of whiskey makers, taking everything down to the minutest detail so that you have an enjoyable experience when you drink whiskey. And I think that's something we all learn, as we grow and we start to understand it from other people or start to get, I've described it historically as, if you're watching Wizard of Oz and we're going from black and white to color, all of a sudden the whole world just opens up and you're like, oh, this is what they're talking about when you're enjoying a whiskey, when you're tasting a whiskey.
I love that, man. How involved is the band? Like I know each member kind of has a different involvement with Blackened, but when you're talking about a collaboration with like Wes Henderson, who founded Angels Envy, or with Rabbit Hole, or the Rye the Lightning, or the 72 Seasons blend, or whatever it might be, like, does the band get involved? Like, are they talking about what could be a future collaboration or a future branding of a blend or anything like that?
Not on that level. They definitely leave that up to myself and my extraordinary team. This is not just one person doing all this. I'm certainly creating the blends. That's on my plate. But I think the imagery, the artistry of it, the visual aspect of it. There are a lot of people who are involved in that, and the band gets involved with that. We'll come up with a couple of concepts visually. For example, we've done some special releases. We did the commemoration of the release of the Black Album, and so we did a special edition box and batch for that. Yeah. We did the batch 100 box set. And so a lot of times, they're very much involved. They want to be a part of that creative process. But as far as the whiskey, they've told me directly that, like, look, we trust what you're doing. You know what you're doing. We're going to trust that you know what you're doing, and we'll help you with the imagery and the kind of the support of it, so to speak, on a grander scale. So I think what I appreciate is that they just like they lean in on their sound engineers and their their riggers and their lighting techs and their pyro guys, like they're like, you guys know what you're doing. Just tell us where to go. So we're not getting, hit by a pyro ball, ball of flame or,
right, yeah.
or what's the best approach. So I think even with the band, they understand the necessity of working with talented people that are specialized in their fields. And I think that's something that they very easily have let me run run wild with it.
Well, and same reason why you don't go into the tuning room and tell James how to play that riff, right?
Right. Do you really want to do it that way?
That's right.
No, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, no way am I doing that. But that's it. We all understand our lane, right? We understand what we're good at and what we're, and I appreciate that. And that's what makes this thing work.
So are there any, listen, I know the world we live in, and so you can't just divulge a whole lot of information, but any hints as to what might be coming for Blackened as far as new releases?
Well, I'm always working on something, and I've got some things in the pipeline. And you're right, I can't really talk about it. But I've always got something going on. And so we do have some stuff coming up. One thing I can talk about, something that's very close and near and dear to my heart. We were doing the Masters of Whiskey series, which were, the original collaboration was with Willett. Then it was with Wes Henderson. And then of course the Rabbit Hole we were just talking about. I kind of went a different direction, and I'm doing a collaboration here in Colorado with 10th Mountain Whiskey for a couple of reasons. One, I was at Stranahan's Colorado Whiskey when 10th Mountain started, and when I was in the Army, I was in the 10th Mountain Division, which was primarily ski and mountaineering troops. Although all my deployments were in the desert and nowhere in the snow or the mountains, but they reached out to me. They're having their 10th anniversary up in Vail, and they asked me to come and do a collaboration with them. They said, one, they've been following my career for years and in the whiskey industry, but also because I'm a combat veteran of the 10th Mountain Division, they thought it would be just symbiotic that we could work together. So I was very pleased to be asked to do that, and it was just pretty extraordinary to be a part of that project. Again, leaning into the community and doing something pretty extraordinary with those guys was a real treat.
Well, and to have a personal connection to it too, and then a couple of different personal connections, like that just makes it that much more special too.
Absolutely. It's been I've always embraced my heritage with my Colorado heritage for one, but having the 10th Mountain Division was created here in Colorado at Camp Hale, and then was moved in the 80s to Fort Drum, New York, which is way upstate and a lot of snow up there. But I think being able to be a part of that years later is just it's an honor for me.
Rob, I don't want to gloss over anything, and I certainly know this is just surface level, but your combat vet experience, for listeners who may not know, part of the 10th Mountain Division, you fought in the Battle of Mogadishu, which I think we know as the Black Hawk Down, that the movie was made about. I mean, that was you were in that. But it's interesting to hear how you were trained as a skier and in snowy conditions, but finding yourself in desert situations and in dusty, hot, gritty things like that. How did you have? I mean, how prepared were you for something like that? Going from what you were training for and then getting dropped. Yeah.
Honestly, we really weren't. We were part of what they call QRF, which is Quick Reactionary Force, which means we can deploy, within 96 hours to a location with all of our equipment. And we were the unit I was with was the 10th TAD, which was the Target Acquisition Detachment. Historically, we were always attached to artillery units because you're tracking artillery rounds. You're tracking the trajectory of the artillery rounds. Well, they needed us in Mogadishu because we needed to track our RPG rounds. We needed to track mortar fire, which the combatants were very fond of using mortars that were attached, in the back of a pickup truck. They'd pull up to a street corner, pull back the tarp, fire, three mortars on either, the embassy compound where I was stationed for a while. I was also stationed at the airfield. They drop them on the airfield. So our goal, was to identify where those targets were. And a lot of times we'd have to physically have eyes on known areas, and watch it because we were under United Nations, guidelines. Yeah. So we had to physically catch them in the act of firing so that we could take out that target. And so we adopted and adapted pretty quickly to urban warfare, as opposed to what we were trained for, which was, mountaineering and skiing and being in extreme cold. We just adapted very quickly to street warfare.
That's amazing, Rob. And I got to ask, because I feel like I've heard this in an interview maybe, or a conversation in the past. Is it true? I mean, when you were serving, that you were trying to make booze, whatever, maybe wine or something like that, as you were out in these situations?
I did. I attempted to make wine in Mogadishu. It was absolutely horrific. It was terrible. I mean, I didn't have very much to work with. I was using Kool-Aid packets from the MRE because you got sugar, and I was using bread yeast that I was able to get from the. I think I got it from the mess hall on the USS America, which was an aircraft carrier that I got to go out there for 3 days. We traded out with some Navy guys. They came in, stayed in our tents, basically, our tents that were just walls of sandbags. And we got to stay on the ship. And one thing about the aircraft carrier, the mess hall is open 23 hours a day because everybody's got different shifts and different rotations. They close it down for 1 hour a day to do a deep clean. And so I just asked them if I could get some yeast. And so I got some bread yeast, and I did a fermentation, and it was just all so rudimentary. And you're also in the desert. There's no place to, nice cool closet to do fermentation. Yeah. It gave me the worst stomach ache, and it was not pleasant. It was not good. So yeah. It was not successful by any means.
Fair enough, man. Well, look at you today. You're doing all right now, man.
Yeah, well, I had better success getting whiskey from the kind of the black market, which was the Italians, because all United Nations, everybody was staying on the embassy compound. So you had everybody from the Turkish to the Egyptians to the Italians. Well, the Italians had set up their own cantina. They had their own rules. Those guys, we were not allowed to go to their cantina. However, we had our little, our black market dealings with those guys, and getting, I had a bottle of Chivas Regal that I, had gotten from them on my 22nd birthday, and, got pretty lit with that.
Right on, man. I love hearing that, Rob. Thanks for sharing some of that, man.
Yeah.
Listen, I know you're on the road. You were on the road, all last year on the M72 tour. You've been staying busy this year on it too. But I'm curious. What you mentioned you were a fan of Metallica since 7th grade. What was the first Metallica show you saw?
Well, the first show I saw was '96. They were headlining Lollapalooza, and I was working as a rigger and the stagehand for Bill Graham Presents out in San Francisco. And I mean, I was ecstatic. That was Metallica headlining, Soundgarden, Green Day was there, Devo was there, which was awesome. Devo was a blast to see live.
Yeah.
And it was just such a treat. And I was actually the stage crew pushing on boxes for Metallica. We didn't interact with them or anything, but that was the first time I actually got to see them, was working their show. And full circle, years and years later, I never would have dreamed that I would have been making whiskey. One, even that I could have even made whiskey, wouldn't have even known that I could do that. And then two, getting to do making whiskey with and for Metallica.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, and I mean that's I started this out by quoting you by saying you've got your dream job within a dream job, and it's those worlds coming together, man. I love seeing it.
It's a lot of fun. The first album that I heard was Master of Puppets. So that's always a special place in my heart, because that's what I started with. And then I got to, listen to Kill 'Em All, and then, start following them as they went along. And when I was in the Army, my roommate was a guitarist, and he had the whole box set of the CDs for And Justice for All, and he was learning every single song. And that was one of our, that was one of that's one of the soundtracks that I had in Somalia. We had that. Alice in Chains' Rooster was a special song for us.
Yeah.
That had just come out, and that was kind of like our, you kind of look at Vietnam and you think Paint It Black by Rolling Stones, or Hendrix or The Doors. Those were all kind of Vietnam era songs that kind of was an anthem for them. Rooster actually was our anthem.
Wow.
In Somalia. So it was pretty extraordinary. But I think just being able to, and Justice for All was one of our big albums too.
I love that, man. I know this is a tougher one than just talking about your first show, but do you have? It doesn't have to be the best, because I know that's a tough question. You've seen a lot, but do you have is there a show that stands out to you as like, man, when I saw Metallica then or there, like that was just one of the best things I've ever seen? Yeah,
it's crazy. I think and I've got to go back and do the math. I think I'm at 31 right now, 31 Metallica shows.
Right on.
And I think obviously the first one is always going to stand out. In '96, I was so excited to be a part of the music industry and be a part of something and building that stage and building that. But I think, the San Francisco Symphony Orchestra was such an incredible show. The way they performed that just shows, and that's on a different level, right? It's nothing like a live heavy show, with Metallica. There's just nothing like that. But seeing them play with the symphony orchestra really shows their level of professionalism and the artistry that they've excelled throughout the years. They've gotten so much better. It just over and over and over, they have honed their craft, and that was a real treat. I think that was, I think, for me, a big treat.
Yeah, I'm with you, and I think that actually the first time you and I talked, we connected on that because I was at that show too, at the Chase Center in San Francisco, and
yes,
and I know Blackened did the S&M2 batch edition of the whiskey, but yeah, I remember being there with a buddy and like kind of walking away and. Not to sound dramatic, but kind of being speechless because my brain just couldn't really compute what I had just seen and all these different sounds that were coming into my head with the symphony, but with Metallica still doing Metallica. It really was something special.
It's pretty incredible. And I mean, look, man, I'm a bit of a I will absolutely admit it. I'm a bit of an emotional person. Like I am really I kind of let my emotions just exist, right? And just and enjoy the moment. I had tears in my eyes at that show, man. It was that moving for me. I think part of it was just kind of in awe of the journey that got me to that point, to be sitting there in the audience watching that and feeling very strongly that I was a part of something much bigger than me, or I think I was very moved by that. And just by, I think the how much they connect with their audience and how much that means to the band to truly embrace their fans and allow the fans to be just a part of the music as they are.
That's right. And we've already used the phrase in this conversation, but there is something to the whole idea of the Metallica family. Like it's not just it's not just something that's thrown around. Like it actually means something when you see them live, when you're standing next to total strangers at a show, but connecting with them. There's nothing like it, man.
There really isn't. And it's the kind of camaraderie too, that we all connect. We know the songs, we're singing the songs, we're headbanging together. If you're in the mosh pit, somebody drops, there's 7 people there to lift that person up immedately. They're picking them up, they're making sure they're okay. And then you keep on going, right? You keep on moving. Right, I remember being at Sohai in LA and seeing, I was in the snake pit, and here comes Jason Momoa just running in and just like diving into the mosh pit and running around like a madman. And like, we're at that point, he's just like anybody else, right? We're all in that mosh pit to sweat it out, to work out the angst and to be a part of something. And he was He wasn't some, big movie star or anything. He was one of us at that moment. And I think that's what I love. It's the great equalizer, right?
That's right, man. Yeah, that's right.
Music.
That's right. That's exactly it, man. And you know what? And just to put a bow on it, I remember seeing a video. I wasn't at the Power Trip Festival that took place, with all the legends, unfortunately. But I remember seeing a video of James and Kirk in the crowd. They weren't in like some secret place that nobody could get to. They're just in the crowd watching Judas Priest, and both just playing air guitar, headbanging, and just having a blast, just like everybody else. Like you're right. Like that music, that special metal, whatever it is the great equalizer. And Metallica, they do it better than nearly anyone, man.
I agree. I was at that show, and it was. That whole weekend was a blast because I had some bucket list bands I had never gotten to see, AC/DC being one of them.
Awesome.
And, and so it was such a treat for me to get to see AC/DC. I'd seen Judas Priest a few times, and getting to see him and getting to see, the guys, Metallica, just like air guitaring and just being, they're embracing their 17-year-old selves and just jamming out. And I think, I think that's really pretty extraordinary. And again, it just supports that whole thing of like music's the great equalizer. We all love, good music, and it's a lot of fun. What's fun is I've shared some stuff with James back and forth. We, he sent me this thing about Coulter Wall, and I was like, yeah, I've got the tattoo on my arm of one of Coulter Wall's albums. And I sent him this guy the other day, Charlie Crockett, which is a musician. He's like, he sounds
a descendant of Davy Crockett, man. Yeah. Yeah.
And it was, and I sent him that, and he's like, I love this. This is great. And I think, again, it's that pure joy of understanding. Something I'm going to give you another little anecdote here. During, I think the tail end of COVID, the band was working on the project where they kind of put it out there to their music community for any musician to do a cover of a Black Album song. Pick whatever song from the Black Album, and then they released that, and we were smoking a cigar up in Vail, and James had on his phone. He's like, "Hey, you got to hear this song," and it was Miley Cyrus, Elton John, and Yo-Yo Ma all working together but remotely to do a cover of Nothing Else Matters. And he was sitting there, and he was like blown away by it, and he was playing it on his phone for me, and he said, he's like, look, he was getting goosebumps. He goes, I never would have thought to sing it like this. I never would have thought to do it like this. And it was just, for him, I think, kind of a humbling experience to, one, he has such a regard for Elton John and just these professionals, and hearing them do that version of it. He was just pretty blown away by it. And I was just absolutely loving the experience of him playing it for me on his phone, which was like a cool experience for me, but also just extraordinary to see. That just, again, goes to show the level of professionalism of how their songs can just evolve with these world-class musicians.
That's right, man. Rob Dietrich, thank you for sharing that. That's a good way to wrap this up. Thanks so much for hanging tonight, brother. It's always great to catch up, and hopefully soon we can raise a glass of Blackened together and cheers. The greatest band in the world. And I gotta say too, I'm sorry we haven't even talked about the Blackened cigars, which I love, and I just love that extension of this and all of that. So we'll have to have you back on so we can dive deep into that.
It'd be a pleasure if anybody's out there. Well, I guess there's a lot of fun with that. There's a good extension of that. So I'd love to talk to you about that. And I gotta say, Chuck, it's always a pleasure talking with you. I know you are, you love your music and your collection too. Got your album collection as well. And I think, it's always such a treat. We're definitely cut from the same cloth. So always a pleasure talking with you.
Awesome. Look forward to the next time, brother.
Likewise, my friend.
That wraps up this episode of Loudwire Nights on Demand. Stay caught up with everything happening in the world of rock and metal on the Loudwire app and at loudwire.com.